Hello everyone, it's Takersubity here, and for today, so happy new year to all my fans. I hope you all have a fantastic 2026 for everyone else, and I hope you all had a really great 2025 regardless of the situations that is happening in real world. And for my first video I wanted to talk about, I thought of making a Pokemon video. This time, me reviewing the latest in the Pokemon franchise, Pokemon Legends ZA. This is the latest in the franchise, as well as the second title to come from the Legends franchise. So given that Arceus came out back in 2021, a few years ago, it is great to see that we are getting another Legends title. Though, unlike Arceus, where it's received quite both receptively as both good game but also with some flaws, ZA, given that it was 2025 and that there was a lot of negative reception on the Switch 2 and the prices that has been happening and Nintendo's business decisions, Pokemon Legends ZA basically added to the fire by having a lot of problems. But in this video, and usually whenever I do these review videos, I mostly kind of do this by mostly doing the typical format of talking about the quality and presentation, the gameplay, the story, characters, miscellaneous parts about it, and then giving out my final verdict and score at the very end of it. In this review video, I actually want to do this a bit differently. I will put those in the second half of the video, but for the first half, I do want to talk about the flaws and what the game's problems have to show, because it is clear by now that the Pokemon Company has been holding Game Freak a lot, especially, and since 2026 is supposed to be the 30th anniversary of the Pokemon franchise, I thought it's time for me to really talk about the negative parts of why ZA feels a bit more of a downgrade to Arceus than when we had with the last title. And I really want to, before I talk about this, I want to let you know for a few notes that these are my personal thoughts and opinions. If you disagree with my opinions about how I feel on ZA, then that's totally fine. Another thing is that I do not have the Mega Dimensions DLC, as I'm not really going to pay another $30 for this. Pokemon ZA in general is already an expensive game along with the other Switch 2 titles, so adding another $30, I'll likely save that another time in 2026. And not to mention is that I've only played a few hours of the post game, so I only just recently beaten the story mode and such, but I hope you guys enjoyed this review and video nonetheless. And so let's really talk about the negative and flaws of Pokemon Legends ZA. So to really start things off of what's the problem with ZA here is that I feel as if it's a downgrade to Arceus, and the reason is because of both the atmosphere and also the setting that takes place, as well as some of the few changes that I have to mention. What I really like about Arceus is that it was a brand new take on the Pokemon franchise. The gameplay was obviously different, and the fact that you not only have turn-based RPGs, but you can also do this in sort of like a semi-open worldish area while also catching Pokemon at the same time. That's what I personally enjoy about it. Not to mention, it takes place in a whole new region, this time taking place in the past, which I really do like. But overall, that's kind of why I like Arceus. Not to mention the really good art style that is shown here, from the sketchy Japanese mythology that is shown here in Arceus in general, and the personal lore that has been added into Legends is what I really liked about Arceus in general. ZA, however, mostly takes place in the modern era. I've been seeing a lot of people talking about the possibility of a Legends Kyurem, which is supposed to be Generation 5. So it does come off as a bit of a surprise for many that we are getting a Legends version of Legends Zygarde taking place in the city of Lumiose, and that's sort of the thing. They also kind of remove the parts in Arceus about the Wild Suns, given that you are taking place in Hisui, which has 5 different areas, which you can find a lot of Pokemon in the region itself. This time, you are now in the city of Lumiose, which is the main setting for the entirety of the game. I'm not a fan of the fact that Lumiose is like the only location taking place in this one game. With the Hisui region, you got a ton of different areas to go through with many environments and other places. Instead, in this one, it has now been fully replaced with the Wild Zone areas, and I'm not really sure how to feel with the Wild Zone areas. It is nice to catch certain Pokemon, and as you progress through the story, you get to see new areas opening up every so often, but I don't really think I'm a fan of the Wild Zone areas, because the reason is that they are really small, you can't really catch Pokemon, and you do kind of need to like be careful, not to mention from the fact that these Wild Zone areas can be a little small at times. Like even by like the very late game, you can kind of see that they sort of ran out of space in areas on what they could add for certain Pokemon. Pokemon, it is nice to see them, but I don't really think it lives up to the same parts and catch abilities when it comes to the outer Wild Zone areas in the Hisui region. That's sort of what I feel is a bit of a downgrade from Arceus all the way to what we have with ZA. And then there was also the cutscenes, which this is sort of another problem that has been stated for almost every modern Pokemon game within the last decade or so. It is clear by now that the Pokemon Company is holding Game Freak back, because when you look at Game Freak's other catalogs, you can see that they are incredibly different when it comes to development when they aren't part of the Pokemon series. And I think the way these games work, especially with the recent titles, is sort of telling of how much Game Freak is being held back, because some of these cutscenes feel so awkward without any type of animation or any type of flair added to it. And while it is great, it is also kind of awkward when these characters have no voices, because that's another thing. I think the biggest elephant in the room is that this game franchise in general desperately needs voice acting. There's a good reason why so many people don't like the singing scene from Sword and Shield, and how the voice acting felt so awkward in many cutscenes that is shown in Scarlet and Violet. They feel so awkward and kind of quiet at times, because when you have actual cutscenes like this, it feels so empty. It feels like they aren't complete, because they are really great when it comes to cutscenes, but in terms of the voice acting and what they have, it feels that they really need to add that. And they gave a reason in why we don't have voice acting in modern Pokemon games, but we are now in 2026. I think it's time for the next title to finally have voice actors, because it is just very, very awkward when you got scenes like this that are really dynamic and are supposed to be epic, but doesn't really feel that way because you have characters that doesn't even have voices at all. Another thing as to why I don't like ZA at times is also the progression. The point of this game is that ZA is going through a ranking system with the newest ZA Battle Royale type of deal. It mostly happens every night, and you go from Z all the way to the very top of letter A. The problem here is that the progression kind of feels worthless. You mostly start off the game with at least starting from Z all the way to rank W and V, and by the time you get to that specific ranking, you then go to a specific main quest, and suddenly you are now going from rank V all the way to the very top of rank F. So that progression system feels kind of worthless when you're mostly going from that one rank all the way to the very top of it. And I get it, because story has to happen, the progression kind of feels like it needs to be, but why can't they just simply, you know, have a bit of time for the characters, and not to mention the Battle Royale aspect of going from ranking from these lowest all the way to probably the middle of it, maybe like rank Q or rank P, and then afterwards you can then go into rank F, where it feels like you are gradually growing. I think the progression just feels so worthless, because it just feels like they're trying their best to get to the story, and that's what I find kind of bothersome about it. Other things to mention about the parts of ZA is that they did bring back the Mega Evolutions that are only obtainable by trade, and I really liked Arceus for another reason, and it's because they are able to access other Pokemon that aren't able to be obtained via the link trade. Because if you're like one player alone and don't have any other friends, then getting these Pokemon like Gengar or Machamp is going to be really difficult to get, because you are required to trade these Pokemon that are obtainable via online. And that is sort of the unfortunate part, because with Arceus you have the link cable, which are able to, you know, evolve these Pokemon specifically. So it is a shame that the trade evolutions are back here, and I kind of wish that the link cables are like a permanent addition for those that doesn't really have an actual friend or anyone that they can trust. Sure, you can kind of check the items in this one whenever you do trade, but it is sort of unfortunate that these trade evolutions are a bit more difficult to get than usual. Then there are the side missions, which, you know, that's mostly a thing for a lot of main quests, and you know, when it comes to the RPG genre in general. For Pokemon, it happened with Arceus, which is fine, and I do think the missions here for ZA is a little repetitive at times, and it's mostly because you do usually have these side quests. You kind of just do these battles, you mostly have to do a fetch quest, and kind of have to do a lot of following every now and then, and not to mention when it comes to these side quests in general, they do kind of feel a bit repetitive repetitive at times. And that's another thing when it comes to the game. I feel that in the middle of the story, it feels kind of repetitive at times, because by the time you mostly get to rank F, it's mostly just the same thing. You wait for the night, you deal with 3 mega evolutions every now and then afterwards you then go to ranking on to your next promotion match, and then you kind of have to do this like little side quests or main quests every so often, and then by the very end of it you then get promoted. And that's mostly the case for like the rest of the game until like the very end of it. So you can kind of see that there's just a bit of a repetitiveness when it comes to the gameplay itself, and that's mostly in the middle of the entire game, which is generally an issue when it comes to for fans who wants to see something different. And not to mention, I think I can still hold by the fact that the pricing of $70 or $60 if you have the Switch 1 version, I still find it to be pretty absurd. It was bad enough that the Switch 2 games are already pricing at $70 when Mario Kart World being $80. The fact that ZA is pricing at $70, and added to the fact that the Legends ZA DLC is also included, which is $30, is pretty absurd at best. And the only reason why is because of bad timing. The DLC is obviously supposed to come out this year, but when it comes to ZA, that was meant to release by the year of 2024, which was why we didn't really hear much from Game Freak or the Pokemon Company for a while, and that's kind of why we are now getting this all of a sudden. Not to mention the fact that if you're wondering between the difference of the Switch 1 and the Switch 2 version of it, you can kind of see a very notable differences, and the reason the Switch 2 edition exists is so because we can see the game's quality update and a bit of graphics being shown up a bit more. And personally, I don't really see much of a difference aside from like the backgrounds, and that's really about it. And last but not least, before I end it off and then going to the second half of this video, locking certain rewards behind online, I really find stupid. Like, you cannot tell me I have to like grind all the way to a specific ranking just so I can get Greninja, Greninja Mega Stone, and I can get Mega Greninja in general. That's basically the same thing for the other Pokemon like Mega Chestnut, Mega Delphox, and especially Mega Excalibur. And I really do hope that this isn't gonna happen again, because again, locking certain characters or mostly certain rewards behind online is already bad enough as it is. So you can kind of see where I'm going at. ZA has a ton of problems, and you can kind of see by that point that Game Freak generally needs to have their own freedom when it comes to the Pokemon Company not holding them back. They do make some good games, and the thing is that when it comes to Pokemon itself is that there are moments where they have time to shine, and I do think ZA has a lot of potential, but overall it feels that there's just a lot of things that they couldn't add up. Well, with that, I think it's time I get to the second part of it, where I talk about the positive parts about Legends ZA. And now for the other half, it's time I talk about the positives and what the game really has to offer. In terms of the quality and presentation, I do think whenever Pokemon does tend to really have its quality, they tend to shine at times. But then there's also the other part of the quality that feels so weird. Like, for example, the biggest problem that a lot of people tend to point out to is that the buildings have these PNG windows that are sticked on and it doesn't feel like it's 3D enough. That's kind of the one thing in time that feels so noticeable. But if you're playing this on the Switch 2, you can definitely tell it's very noticeable. But when it comes to the quality and everything else, like cutscenes, they are phenomenal. They always tend to really be great when it comes to these cutscenes, and they still tend to do that when it comes to Pokemon in general. And I really do enjoy that when you do the white parts of the game. So overall, the quality and presentation, it's decent at best, but it's not exactly one I would say is the biggest highlight when it comes to the Pokemon games. The story this time it takes place within the years after the events of X and Y. Since we are in Lumio City, you'll be able to see certain characters that you may recognize, such as AZ, Emma, and Mabel from Team Player. And since this takes place after the events of X and Y, you'll also get some brand new lore added into the game that wasn't shown before. And I really do kind of like the story in this one, since you're mostly just a mere tourist that basically was dragged into the ZA Battle Royale in order to like deal with some rogue mega evolutions and also learning some mysteries behind the past of AZ's 3,000 years life cycle. And that's kind of really what I like about this thing, because, you know, in terms of story, ZA definitely feels really good, and in terms of the quality, they definitely look much better when it comes to compared to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and we know what happened with that game a few years ago. I also love the characters in this one, especially the newer characters like Tawny, Lida, Naveen, Henny. I mean, most characters I really do like, and the writing in this one is surprisingly funny at times, because Pokemon usually has its bad moments, but when it comes to writing, they tend to be really funny whenever they hit right, and ZA definitely does that when it comes to the writing and their characters. I love some of the characters' development, and they do kind of have some interesting traits that makes them really shine from one another. As I said, I do like most of these characters. I'm not really a fan of some certain ones, since they either just don't add to the plot of the story, or they just straight up disappear halfway through. Like Jet, for example, despite her being like a main character of some sort, she just doesn't really add much to the plot, and then kind of disappears halfway through the game until like the very end of it, and that's just kind of about it. And then there's the combat system. The combat system and the gameplay is pretty similar to Legends Arceus, though this time it removes the turn-based mechanic that was known for Pokemon for all these years. This time, it is sort of taking the turn-based, but instead, you are mostly doing this in a roguelike battle format, where you command your Pokemon by pressing these 4 different buttons, which can activate their abilities, and you can do that whenever you want, and this can happen in either Rogue Evolutions, Mega Evolutions, or just anything else. I do think the combat this time is really satisfying to do, and I do think it's a bit better than the turn-based one that Pokemon is always known for. So this one I would say is a bit of a refreshing take when it comes to the gameplay aspect of ZA. Then there's also the Battle Royale that is usually happening every night, and that's like another thing I do want to add. I think the cutscenes tend to be unnecessarily long for no reason. Like, I get it, you're mostly giving us the rewards, but I do think we don't really need to see that many cutscenes all at once whenever the ZA Battle Royale tends to happen or to really end at all. I do think it's a bit unnecessarily long at times, and that's like another flaw I have to mention. But I do want to say that the Battle Royale does add to a lot of things, though the mostly format, you kind of just sneak up against the opponent, beat them, and then mostly get their points, and then get to a promotion match, which can enable to the next part of the story. Then there's also the Wild Zones, and the Wild Zones here is basically the same thing as you did with Arceus. With the Wild Zones, you can catch Pokemon, sneak up behind them, and catch them with any Pokeballs you like, and not to mention the return of the Alpha Pokemon have now been integrated into this game that came from Arceus. I really am glad that the Alpha Pokemon in this one are back in this one, and they hit really hard. Like, they attack so hard to the point where it does make them into a bit of a viable threat at times, and that's what I really like about Arceus at times, because, you know, you can see that they do try to put some effort into this one, and there's also some occasional platforming at times. Aside from the Wild Zones, you can also find Pokemon that are on the roof, and there are some scaffoldings which you have to climb, but personally, if anything, I feel like we do need to have a jump button for this one, because there are some certain platforming where you either have to roll, or you have to use the Rotom phone in order to, like, glide all the way up to the next platform. If that's the case, why not just have a jump button at that point? We already got a lot of the main parts that came from Arceus, so if anything, a jump button feels kind of necessary in my opinion. Occasionally, you'll also get these rewards from Mabel's research, which does kind of make you do a lot of things, either like winning a bunch of Pokemon battles, filling in the Pokédex, and other things like, you know, doing like, you know, like catching a specific type of Pokemon. That's basically what Mabel's research is all about, and by the very end of it, you'll be able to get the Shiny Charm at level 50, which I honestly don't mind. And I mean, I really do like these types of side quests, and I do kind of feel like these side missions and Mabel's research are kind of just there to pad out time, and that's like another thing. When it comes to the story aspect of it, as much as I do like the writing and the characters, as I said, it does get a little repetitive in the middle of it by the time you get to the rank F. And afterwards, and occasionally, you will be able to find 3 types of Rogue Mega Evolutions, which requires your Pokemon to Mega Evolve, which that's another thing I really like about ZA. I am really glad that they brought back the Mega Evolutions in this one. I've always been a fan of the Mega Evolutions. I've just not been much of a fan of the newest mechanics they've been added in the latest Pokemon games, like the Z moves, the Dynamaxing, and I mean no, the Z moves I really like, but the Terraforms, but also the Dynamaxing, I've just not really been a fan of that. So I am glad that we are able to see the Mega Evolutions added, with some new ones being added as well, which I personally like the most. And last but not least, the post-game content. Usually when it comes to post-game content in Pokemon, they tend to be a bit of a hit or miss. For this one though, I do think it's a little bit of a both. I do kind of like the character writing in this one a bit more, but I think the whole point of the post-game is that you being able to fight and go through the Battle Royale once more, like, and doing it a total of 15 times, that's mostly really just there to pad out the runtime and not much else, and occasionally you do have to catch the Pokemon Xerneas and Yveltal, and you would eventually get the Pokemon of Zygarde, but I haven't really gotten to that part yet. As I said, I've only gotten like a few hours into the post-game content of Z to A, but overall, that's kind of about it. This game is incredibly flawed, and I think it's really no joke as to why a lot of fans tend to really dunk on Game Freak, or mostly the Pokemon Company, for how either rushed it is, how overpriced ZA is overall. So the question is Pokemon Legends ZA truly worth it on your Switch 1 or Switch 2? Now, if you are a Pokemon fan, then I would mostly say yes. If you're a general fan who wants to try to get into Pokemon, then this isn't too bad. But this game generally has a bit of flaws. It is sometimes rushed. I do think that the game could have had some good voice acting. Some of the changes here are a little unnecessary at times, but there are some good aspects I like about it, like the story and the writing. So if anything, I would give this final scoring of Pokemon Legends ZA a total of a 5 or 6 out of 10 overall. It is a decent and solid game, but it definitely has its flaws, and I do really think I have to point it out. Not to mention the $70 price tag and the $30 DLC doesn't really help it that much, but overall, this is all I really want to say into my review on Pokemon Legends ZA. I do hope you guys enjoyed this video, and 2026 is the 30th anniversary of the Pokemon franchise, and I really do hope by this year, when the eventual Generation 10 comes, because that was leaked about a few months ago, when Generation 10 comes in the near future in 2026, then I do hope that Game Freak is given all the time and is not going to be held back by the Pokemon Company any longer, and is going to be, you know, at least put in some effort into this big generation, because this is supposed to be a big occasion for the franchise, and I do hope they improve on that by the future. And overall, ZA is flawed. I do think it's a bit of a downgrade from Arceus, but it's not a bad title. It's decent at best, but it's not something that I would say is worth the $70 pricing. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. What do you think about Pokemon Legends Z2A? Do you think it's worth the $70? Do you think this game could have been improved upon? What do you hate about ZA? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below about this. And so with that, leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell for more videos, follow my Twitter and Instagram, and I'll see you guys next time. And remember this, once a legend, always a legend, and Happy New Year to everyone, and let's all enjoy a great 2026 together.